When the final whistle blew on his playing career, Niall Woods didn't just leave the game, he reinvented himself. A former Irish international and standout for Leinster, London Irish and Harlequins, Niall played through one of rugby's greatest transformations, from amateur values to professional eras, pressure and pace. But his biggest impact came after he'd hung up his boots. As inaugural CEO of the Irish Rugby Players Association, Niall built a player-first movement from the ground up. A bold stand for athlete rights when few dared. Today, as founder and managing director of Navy Blue Sports, Ireland's only full-service sports agency, Niall manages elite athletes, landmark sponsorship, and navigates the intersection of sport, media, and business. In this episode of The Business Then, we will dive into the DNA of champions, what elite sport teaches about leadership and resilience, the art of the pivot, his journey from player to CEO to entrepreneur, building trust and high performance off the pitch, what the next generation of athletes must master to thrive. From the dressing room to the boardroom, this conversation is about reinvention, values, and building something that lasts. Welcome to The Business Then.
Thanks, guys. Nice to be on.
You had a very illustrious playing career. What did you think of DNA?
I think as the youngest of four kids, I always had to fight to be heard. I mean, I often hear that. And when I think back, I think about it and I think, yeah, I probably did. My brother was next to me and then two sisters. And it was a fairly heavily sporty family. My dad had been a successful rugby player as well. So he was a big driving force in this. He had a successful business then as well. So I think I definitely had the raw materials in me. I was small. It was, I think, in the under 15s, I was on the third team in the school. And then I shot up summer of fourth year. And then 2 years later, I ran 10.8 in 100 meters. So I got shifted from scrum half to wing or fullback or outside centre in my last year in school. So I'd be deemed a late developer, I suppose. And I was pretty skinny and light. So I think I had an element of a bit of a chip because I didn't make the schools team. I was in Blackrock, which is a big rugby school here in Dublin. So I didn't make the senior cup team. So that was like heartbreak at the time. So that sort of helped to sort of fuel me on. But I definitely think I got the speed apparently from my dad's uncle's side. But then, yeah, I had the sort of the fight from being the youngest and having to dig in all the time.
So now, obviously, you represent basically a lot of the leading athletes in Ireland, and like what we're intrigued by is there anything? Do you think there's a common theme in their DNA that makes them to be an elite performer?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they all have talent. Obviously, you can't make it without talent, but definitely the thing, certainly with my clients, is, and the thing I look for most is the hard work. But also, do they want to work hard? Because obviously there's lots of fellas who say they'll work hard, but these guys work very hard. And also the other thing that is common in all of my clients is they're very down to earth. So, which is a trait I think that gets missed or a lot of people don't see and realize. And I would view as an agent now managing individuals, sort of if a guy comes in 18, 19, 20, and I manage him for 10 or 15 years. When he leaves, I really want to aim that he's still down to earth and sort of a grafter when he leaves. If they got a bit arrogant in the meantime, I see it as a little bit of a failure. But that would be the biggest thing: the hard work, down to earth, and just getting on with the job. I think is probably the most common theme, I suppose, through all of our clients, sort of male and female, sporting, and then we've a number of TV personalities as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, is there anything, do you think, that comes from their like upbringings that make them, like, I suppose, hardworking, coachable, probably another one?
Yeah, like there's a lot that have all of that, and then there's a few sort of ones that you just notice they have that extra bit. I don't know what, sometimes it's a presence when you meet them. Some of them you can see they listen really well. And when you meet a young player first, particularly, I end up doing a lot of talking because they have a lot of questions because they don't really know what an agent does, how the relationship works. And you can sort of spot early on who the ones you think will actually, certainly would have leadership qualities. And for me, I think it was something, I was quiet when I played, as you might remember. Might have been that quiet off the pitch, but with a few beers in me, I like to listen a lot. And that was one of the things that probably didn't take from rugby into post-career early enough. It probably took me 10, 12, 13 years before I started to use the fact that I was listening, but I wasn't really listening. And like the last 10 years, that's my biggest thing. Wherever I go, I'm listening. Even if I'm doing a lot of talking, when the other person talks, I want to listen, and just to try and really work out what they want the best or the most.
Got me? Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that there made rugby's leap from amateur through to professionalism. What did that shift teach you about leadership, performance and teamwork when you had to evolve so quickly?
I mean, you guys will remember, it was all a bit hit and miss the first couple of years in particular at London Irish when I moved over. Obviously, the game went pro in 95 and I moved to London the summer 96. I would have been training pretty much not like a pro because I was going to work. I was trained to be an accountant, but I did a fitness session on a Monday night. I did 2 gym sessions, Tuesday and Thursday night for 40 minutes before the rugby session. And then on a Wednesday night, I went to the track, which wasn't that physically tiring. It was more sharp. And a Friday evening, I went for 20 minutes on the track and then game Saturday. So I found the switch. I was into all of that. So when it went pro, I couldn't go to the track. A lot of the coaches we had, like Willie Anderson wouldn't let me go. He wouldn't let me go. Eventually Dick Best let me go. So I was doing less track work as a pro than I was as an amateur. But I think some of the coaches we got exposed to in the early days, even on the S&C side as well, there was a guy, John Brierley, if you remember, like he could be that triple jumper for Great Britain in the previous Olympics. So learning off people like that, like we had Clive Woodward, like Clive got me over. Very good talker, let's just say. But he was quite clever. Like he knew where his weaknesses were, and he used to bring in other coaches. And I think that ultimately for him won the World Cup in 2003. He had a very good squad of players, obviously, but he brought in the good coaches where he couldn't do. But yeah, I love the stats, and I would like to, if you ask me would I like to play now, I'd probably say no, but the yes part would be for the stats, the GPS stuff, the tracking, always push myself. I don't think you two lads would have liked the GPS, but
Yeah.
I think for me was, and the leadership was, I think over a period of 4 or 5 years, that first 4 or 5 years, it went away from the amateur side with just more specific instructions. And Dick Best, our old coach, would have been very prominent in that and not saying something just for the sake of it. I think at one stage we were going to get fined £5 if anyone said, "Come on, let's go." And there was definitely a lot of money made by Dick in the first sort of 3 or 4 weeks of that.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. So, I mean, we talk about the old days and the old coaches. I mean, like actually, we had Dick Best on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he refers to you now as teacher's pet
Yeah,
because he
I
said he would
remember that.
always turn to you in a crisis, and you basically were his most liked player. I don't know at London Irish, which is a great accolade. I mean, I can only speak of our time at London Irish, and we had. So Clive Woodward, great communicator. We had Willie, who me and Fitzy talk about as a guy who had a lot of empathy. And then obviously you have Dick Best, who actually had a lot of empathy and isn't known for it. But what kind of leadership traits did you learn from these great coaches and also the great players that you play with, like Conor O'Shea and Justin Fitzpatrick and
Yeah.
people like this?
I think I definitely got it initially from my dad.
Yeah.
Purely because he had a saying, what was it? Winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. So that was drilled into all of us as kids. It's probably a little bit too harsh when you look back now, but I would have said I chose to sort of lead myself as well because I was that small kid who got big, or not, I got tall, wouldn't say I was big, a bit later, and everyone said, "You're not going to make it, you're too skinny, you can't tackle." And that was a bit of a chip on the shoulder for me to push myself on. So I would have led sort of push myself quietly. I think you mentioned Conor O'Shea. Like I played practically every age grade with him here and in the UK. And then obviously we had 5 years together at London Irish. So I loved playing with him because he always made me look good. So that was handy. But I think coach wise, I had a fitness coach. I sort of touched on it earlier. Basically in my last year in school, Jim Burns, who was an athletics coach. So he was a science teacher as well. He was way ahead of his time. Like in 1988, we were taking carbohydrate drinks. I was taking creatine in 1991, I think, before it even became popular in the 92 Olympics. So I would go to the track with him because he was an athletics coach and do all sorts of different sort of training with him to make it a bit different. So he was a massive influence in that early 90s period when I left school, because I went to Blackrock Rugby Club and he was the S&C coach there. And then, I mean, Clive, I learned a lot. I remember when, I think it was the second or third game of the season, we lost the first 3 or 4, I think.
It's the first 6, I think. The
Yeah,
first 6, yeah.
but it was after the third or fourth game, and he got the video with the old machine with the old push buttons, and he said, your first instinct is to kick when you're getting the ball, like back in my 22. And I said, no, it's not. I wasn't having any of it. And he said, watch. So he showed me 3 different examples where it was. And he said, I don't want you to kick. I said, just run it. I don't care what happens, which is exactly what I needed at the time. So I took certain things from him. Willie was great for hard work and drilling that in again. Like, we probably overtrained under Willie, but that was just the way he had come from, I suppose. And it always had worked for him with teams before. And to a degree it did, because we stayed out of the relegation. We didn't get relegated. We were in it twice, obviously. And then Bestie, I loved. Again, his knowledge of the game was just unbelievable. Obviously, his wit in destroying team members of the opposition team pre-match was comedy gold. But also probably because he liked me and I liked him.
Yeah.
I didn't have that relationship with a lot of coaches. So it was definitely new. I can remember you all slagging me about being teacher's pet. Or if we wanted something, I was sent in to try and get it. So and for him, the leadership side as well, he was clearly the boss. He didn't mess with him.
Yeah.
But he didn't necessarily talk a huge amount either. He let, especially when Brendan Venter came in, I think it was February 88. And he obviously saw immediately Brendan liked to do a lot of talking. And he just let Brendan sort of run the sessions. And he'd ask for specific opinions then at different times. But his ability to let someone else, I suppose, lead was something I hadn't seen before. Previously, it was always the head coach. Basically, he was the boss, end of story. No one really wanted to challenge him. So I think I definitely learned a huge amount off Bestie.
Yeah, I was saying about when we spoke to Dick. I mean, we've looked at other leaders, and I think it was Graham Henry or Warren Gatland said it took him like 15. No, it was Graham Henry. It took him like 15, 20 years to work out that as a leader, you don't really say much. I think Dick Best definitely carried that trait, and he knew when to crack the whip as well. And it always felt like he was a leader in terms of you knew you couldn't just keep knocking on his door, basically, I felt.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Clive Woodward there in terms of, bringing in other coaches around him to strengthen up his team, cover up his weaknesses, to make it an environment. And that was certainly an interesting period of time when we were all at London Irish, and those perhaps decade afterwards, where you started to grow the coaching team. At one point it was, if your head coach was a forwards coach, you had a backs coach and that was it. And you maybe had an S&C coach, but now the coaching teams are huge and, it's very specialized and you rely on the expertise of other people. So Bestie was quite astute in that capacity. So I want to talk about your sort of first transition after rugby. And, I think you went and worked a little bit with the RPA in England, and then you took over the CEO role at Arupa. What experiences did you have as a player that influenced your decision to lead at Arupa and fight for players' rights?
I think, again, the digging in, sort of putting your body where your mind didn't want to put your body, in long, hard training sessions, especially probably under Willie Anderson, wet, cold, freezing, doing hard fitness sessions that you didn't want to do, particularly pre-season. That ability, just that I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I finished. So obviously my career ended with a knee injury. And then I worked with Damien Hopley, who also ended his career with a knee injury about 4 years before me. So I think I had that extra chip, I suppose, to be successful on the pitch. And then I had a chip because I got injured early. I retired at 30, so I had a good stint of playing 10, 11 years. But I think it was just the hard work and wanting to hard work for me and for others. I think that sort of paternal instinct came from my father. Obviously, he was my father, but he always seemed to be helping people in his business. And I think that just was in me from the start, and maybe that's why I fell into it. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't want to go back to accountancy. I was thinking, oh, I'll do sports marketing or something. My agent at the time asked me to work for him as an agent, and I said no. Someone else asked me about 5 years later. I said no. And then sort of 10 years later, I ended up being an agent. So, but yeah, it was the ability as well. I touched on it a little bit earlier about listening. Certainly that period where I started the Players Union here after a couple of years in England, I didn't listen enough. I was very combative was my negotiating style, but I think it was because the Players Union here was brand new. The RFU didn't really want it. They were afraid I was coming with Hopley, I think, at the time, and they didn't want anyone from the UK coming. So they were quite happy to part fund me for sort of 3 years. So they probably thought they could control me to a certain degree. And you had to push it to get the players sort of understanding of what the Players Union was, because not everyone really understood it. If you were talking about match fees and win bonuses and them going up, the boys were quite happy. If you were talking about insurance or tax, they weren't too bothered. So obviously I had my own insurance issues when I got my career-ending injury. My claim took 4 years to process. And then fast forward another sort of 3 years, I created an income protection product with a company here, Aricus Corporate Brokers, which was here. The product covered a lot of players over the years for 5 or 6 years. So yeah, I think it was a little bit was in me already. And I had that little bit of anger or the chip where, like, coming from the amateur days, the RFU, whether it was in England or the IRFU here, the players were always down the bottom. I can remember playing against Scotland in, I think it was 95. There was 4 buses at the airport, 3 for all the Blazers and 1 for the team. When we go to the hotel to check in, this is the Thursday night before the test, all the Blazers are pushing us out of the way, and we're the ones who are playing the game. So there was always that element there for the first 5, 6, 7, 8 years in Irupa, I think. So I just had to be a bit annoying to get stuff done.
There was certainly a lot of growth, I mean, on and off the pitch, and we've touched upon it, as it went from amateur to professionalism, and off the pitch as well, whether it's players' rights, union growth, whatever. There's been an exponential amount of growth in all aspects of the game.
Yeah, I mean, Fitz, you said you did, a wonderful job as well, and he's commented on that a couple of times. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure like the early experiences of amateur rugby and early in the shambles, often of the early professionalism. Some of the stories at London Irish we used to have about match fees being cancelled at the last minute, and then we had the whole debacle about who can play in the Interpros. Do you remember that sort of?
Yeah.
And all of that went on in the early days, and the players were actually quite far down the list, really, of priorities. So now going on to your own agency, Navy Blue, where you're known for quality over quantity. I mean, what's your definition of success in this space?
I suppose hanging on to players, not clients, them not leaving. So like I'm nearly, it'll be 15 years in January representing players individually. And we've probably only lost maybe 7 or 8 over that period. So in an industry where there's a lot of chopping and changing. So it's very much, particularly in rugby, word of mouth. So you do a good job for one player, you get another one come to you or another one come to you. But if the flip side is, if you do a bad job, they like to talk in the dressing room. So you just have to focus on the quality. And in the early days, obviously I came from the Players Association, so I knew all the playing population here in Ireland. Either I played with some of them or against them, or all the younger ones, they knew who I was because I ran the Players Union. So I was I was working for Sky Sports as a pundit as well for 4 or 5 years after I stopped playing. So I was watching a lot of rugby. So I knew who all the good players were. And I just tried to focus on players I thought would last and be good professionals, play internationally. You don't always get it right. Some agencies have a sort of scattergun approach and they'll go very young and just get loads of players or try and get 10 of the Irish under-20s or whatever team with the hope that 2 or 3 come through. We very much focus on maybe if I go to the Irish 20s, for example, there might be 3, maybe 4 out of that squad that we want. And we would try to get them. So again, success is getting those better ones, I suppose, on board as a client. You can't get everyone. Different players have different views on if I have Dan Sheehan as a client, other hookers sometimes don't want to come to me because I have Dan Sheehan. So at the end of the day, I don't pick the team. I don't decide who gets a national contract or a provincial contract. I maximize the money. And I suppose sometimes I would argue I have two clients, Ross Byrne and Harry Byrne. Ross has just gone to Gloucester, but for a number of years they were in Leinster playing together. They're brothers, they're out halves, they're fighting for the same position, and they both came to me and were very happy with what we did for them as a client, both me getting their contract and then any commercial work as well. But everyone's different, and then sometimes players can get influenced by partners, parents, whatever, and say, oh no, don't go to him, he's got too many. Or you need to go to this agency, they've got a presence globally. But
Right.
rugby world is so small, and having worked in the player unions, I obviously would have worked with 8 or 9 of the unions around the globe. So we used to meet twice a year. So you have contacts everywhere. And then there's coaches everywhere that I played with and against. Like at one stage, when I started, I think you two probably played in the game against Quins in 98. For the backline, Dave Humphreys was in Gloucester. Mark McCall, who was playing with us, was in Saracens. Or went at the time, this is 2012, Director of Rugby in Saracens. Conor O'Shea was at Quins. And there was one more, or maybe it was me, all involved in rugby still. So it's just an amazingly small yet global game. So that's where it becomes beneficial.
Yeah, it's amazing actually from that London Irish team how many have gone on to such great things like Connor, Mark McCall is incredible. I mean, as an agent, I mean, I'm a recruitment agent. I've got a recruitment agency, and it's probably fairly similar in
Yeah,
terms
yeah.
of the biggest challenge is like balancing clients, which in your case, are the clubs versus the candidates, which are the players. And it's quite, I mean, how do you manage that kind of tightrope to keep everyone happy?
It's a little bit different, although you're the same. There's companies and candidates for the job,
Yeah,
so I've players and clubs. So again, it's been straight and focusing on quality. Like I can
absolutely.
remember, I represented a player, and I was talking to Toby Booth, who the two of you will know, well. And Toby said to me, he said, Niall, he said, your man is average at best. The player I was pushing. Now I knew your man was average. But if I had argued against him, he was also a prop, so he knew right well as a winger. I didn't know, not that I didn't know, but I sort of knew he wasn't a good enough scrummager. And I knew in that moment, if I say, no, he is, he'll just go, he's a spoofer. He's like the rest of them. So you have to sort of back yourself with the quality of your player. And a
Yeah,
lot of the time, like if I rang Conor O'Shea about a player, he would know anyway. He'd know the Irish market. But the first thing Conor would say is, what's he like as an individual? Because a club doesn't want some cocky, arrogant fella coming in, someone who's going to upset the sort of team sort of morals or morale or just be a bit of a dick. So invariably, that's more important. And it's probably similar with you, Moo. The qualities, like the background, where he's from, what are the parents like, what are his friends like. I've often had clubs ask me to move a player from where he's living, try and get him away from a house where he's living with 3 or 4 university mates, because the
yeah,
distraction is they're all out, and it's very hard to say no at times for some young guys. And so you're
yeah,
working in a way for both, but ultimately my job is to get the best result for the client, which is the player. So, but and it comes down to respect and I suppose quality as well. They sort of know over time. I remember James Collin was, I think, my third client. He was in Munster number 8, and he had just turned 30, and he came to me, and Munster only wanted to give him a 1-year contract. They were arguing he was too old. So within 3 weeks, he was in London Irish. Actually, Toby Booth was going to sign him, and Munster sort of panicked, offered a 2-year contract, big uplift in contract value. So immediately then I had credibility with James, and then I think Tomás O'Leary came straight after him a few months later. So yeah, and you just have to back yourself. You can't spoof.
no,
Um,
totally get it now, totally.
because ultimately, if you spoof, you have to know your clients, like the player, the qualities, both as a player and individual. Because if you don't, and they come back going, you didn't tell me this, then the relationship can become a little bit frayed.
Yeah, there's actually one thing there that is different from sport and business, and what business can learn is like if I'm placing a lawyer at a law firm, they're generally not too bothered about personal qualities. And I'm like trying to say you should be bothered. Someone might not have the experience that you want, but they're, good people, humble, they're going to be great leaders. But they're still looking at experience. And this is where I think, like, after this conversation with Fitzy, that business falls way behind sport. And the other thing as well, which you mentioned in the art of negotiation, I found being dead honest, no one can question it. And if you're honest with people, you can have some like really frank conversations with clients and candidates, and no one is ever offended.
Yeah.
Sometimes I had a conversation yesterday with a law firm about an offer, and they didn't make the offer. And I said, you said you're going to make it yesterday and you haven't, you let the person down. How bad does this look? And just having those honest dialogues, and they respect.
But
yeah, honesty is definitely a trick for sure.
Yeah. I mean, there's times where you have a player here. I'd won this season. He had an offer to go to England. He wasn't involved with the international game, so there was no concern there. He was going to a very successful club in England, and he just wanted to stay here. And the club in England was sort of having a go at me a little bit. And I said, no, I never said he's definitely coming. You've asked me several times, and I said, I think he will. My opinion is he should go, but ultimately it's his decision. And I said, he is saying he feels tied to where he is. Yeah. So again, being honest and as transparent as possible. Like they can be pissed off for a couple of weeks, all right, but they invariably could be looking for another one of my clients. So they have to come back to me.
Yeah.
And I can't stay pissed off with them if I then have to go looking to them for a client as well at a later stage. So again, it goes back to nearly what it was like on the pitch, where you used to knock lumps out of each other and then go in and shake hands and have a drink afterwards. That was the mentality I took in the early years. And actually I struggled with people who hadn't played rugby because it's such a unique sport, because you literally smash into each other. I was just thinking, if I argue with this guy and I'm not necessarily maybe passive aggressive or getting animated, once the meeting's over, I'm fine. I'm thinking it's fine. Whereas he or she wasn't thinking it was fine. So that took me probably 10 years as well to realize you can't be that sort of feisty, aggressive individual in every environment. There's certain ones you have to pick and choose. So again, there was probably a fair bit of anger in me, certainly the first 3 or 4 years post my career, because of the career-ending injury, because I didn't deal with it. Because in 2001, August 2001, a bloke didn't talk about his feelings. So there was nothing set up for any of us to go and talk, and I wouldn't have gone anyway, I don't think, if there was. So yeah, your anger, you're sort of peed off. You weren't playing rugby. I remember watching Harlequins games going, I'm better than him. And after 3 games, I stopped going because I just went, I'm just getting bitter and twisted here. I have to stop.
I get it. Like, being an agent is a humbling experience. So sometimes you have to just bite your lip, but I also find culturally, some people have got they're different attitudes. So I do a lot of work in the Middle East, and they like people that are spiky with them.
Yeah.
It's the only way you can get a deal done.
If
you're too nice, then nothing ever happens.
Yeah.
No, good stuff.
Yeah, I need patience as well. So if you're dealing in France, you have to use a French agent, and so there's a certain element of a control freak in me. So you have to cede over some control to the French agent, and they do the negotiations, and I don't like that. So if it's player or any other country in the world, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But you're then in the hands, and French agents, everything's much slower in France. So then you've your client going, any updates, and going, no. And if you keep chasing the French agent, they just shut down. They don't want to know. Yeah,
but there's a great work hack there as well for business now, which is like, you've got to be structured when you follow up. You can't follow up and make 6 calls a day. You've got to structure or chase every 4 or 5 days and be patient and slowly chip away.
Yeah, like even Geordie Murphy, who was my first client in 2011. Now, he came into work for me 2 years ago, and he's so much better at it now. But that first 6 months, the minute an email came in, he wanted to reply. And his emails were really short and to the point. And I said, no, you need to flesh it out a bit more. And I said, and don't go back to him now. I said, maybe go back at about 5:30, 6:30 on a Friday evening.
Yeah.
And that'll just really annoy you, man. There's all the sort of tricks you learn and sort of negotiation tactics and stuff.
All the law firms do that. They email you at 5:30 and ruin your weekend.
I got it done to me a load of times. So
Yeah.
then after a while, I was going, all right, now I'm gonna try this one.
But ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening and you get an email from Niall Woods at 30 on the Friday, you know why he's doing it.
I rarely do it anymore, thankfully.
But it's interesting, that adaptability, because we all had to be adaptable as players, you know, different opposition, different coaches, different clubs, different leagues. So you had to keep on reinventing yourself. And as we come out of playing sport into business and broader life and dealing with different people and different aspects of life, you have to keep on evolving, as you've mentioned there. When you look back at your sporting career, what edges were you able to, or what skills were you able to transfer into this current role as an agent? What were you able to draw back on?
I think well, there's obviously always the hard work and the grafting underneath everything, but I certainly, because I was a goal kicker, that required in rugby, I could have sprinted 80 meters and scored a try, and then I have to get calm quickly to take a kick. And also you have to put out of your head, I've kicked 4 out of 4, or I've missed, I'm 1 from 4. This is to win the game. If I miss this, we lose the game. So I developed a sort of mantra of sayings, and I actually still use it. I use it when I'm playing golf. It's just repeating words in my head to clear it, and breathing techniques, which I do a lot of Wim Hof breathing the last 2 years to calm myself. I didn't realize it was a breathing technique when I kicked. It was the first 3 very big deep breaths to try and bring my heart rate down. So if I'm in a negotiation or a meeting, I certainly didn't have it in Irupa, but I do now, where I try and breathe. And again, just when I say what I brought to golf was head down, don't force it, and follow through, which was relevant for the golf swing as well. But there's things like that. I started doing transcendental meditation 2 years ago as well, which sounds a lot worse or heavier than it is. You actually don't think of anything, which is great. I do it twice a day for 20 minutes, once before I get up and then once in late afternoon generally. And that, I found that I would have loved to have that in rugby, because it is right. You don't necessarily notice anything in the 20-minute sessions. It's more after a period of time, 3 to 6 months, you generally feel calmer in yourself. And then also, I think I said it, the cold water exposure, resilience, which I had as a player. I love going swimming in the sea in the freezing cold, and it's bananas. I need the challenge of getting in there, and I'm now staying in longer, because you sort of miss, because you don't have that outlet, I suppose, of hitting people. Tackle bags. I was always good with a tackle bag. I might not be great in the pitch, but you could hit a tackle bag to get some frustration or testosterone out of your body. But again, just pushing your body, not necessarily physically as much as you did when you played, but just pushing your mind, probably more your mind, to do things and keep active. Like, both my parents got dementia, so I'm a bit anal now that I'm going to get it, or I'm more likely to get it. So I'm keen to keep active my mind all the time. So even if I retired from work at some stage, which I don't think I ever will, I'd want to be still doing stuff and trying to read more as well, which I don't really enjoy, but I'm sort of forcing myself to do that as well.
That's very interesting. I mean, what's coming through to me in spades there is that growth mindset, same as you had as a player. You know, you don't get to the top of the mountain as a professional or an international if you're not constantly trying to reinvent yourself, looking to be better, analyzing where you are now, looking at where you want to go in the future, you know. And then, interestingly enough, you mentioned transcendental meditation. Gats brought that into the Ireland squad in the late 90s. He brought a group in to do it. I tried it, like yourself, you know, or like all of us, was, you know, having that growth mindset. Is this going to give me an edge? Then okay, I'll go for it. And I found it very good. I'll be honest, I don't do it probably as much as I should, because like everything, it needs repetition and consistency. But when I do get into that mindset of going back to it, I found it to be very, very a great life skill.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like Coldplay, the lead singer, he does it. So he'll do it before he goes on stage. So a lot of TV personalities are the same, because they get nervous and they find it sort of calms them.
For sure.
So I was doing other meditations, but you have to concentrate on what you're listening to. And for me, that just didn't work. And then I'm disciplined, I suppose. So you have to do it. Like, I'm up generally sort of 6:15, 6:30, literally get up and then get back into the bed and do it for 20 minutes. So it's just a matter of it's routine now. I don't think I'll ever stop doing it. But again, it's just pushing yourself, like you said, to do something a bit different because you have to. You can't stay the same. Like if even in work, there's a team of 6. Originally, it was just me. So I was leading myself. I remember day one, I had the printer that's still there and a Mac in an office going, what have I just done? Because I took a pay cut of over 50%. And that's the second time the first pay cut was enforced because of the career ender. I didn't work for nearly 6 months and then I was 75% cut in salary. So again, you adapted. I didn't go out with the boys because you couldn't afford to go out in London. We used to go to the King's Road. Well, the back certainly did on a Friday before a game and just drink coffee, watch the world go by. Like all that stuff just went out the window. So you just have to train yourself to adjust, take the drop in salary and work yourself back up. But yeah, I mean, starting Navy Blue, it's 50% pay cut, big mortgage, wife, 2 kids, a third one a year later. So you sort of look back, people go, fair play, like how did you do it? And I go, well, I didn't even think of it like that, how do you do it?
Yeah.
You wanted to do something and ultimately it took a while to make the decision. And then no choice. You had to work, you had to bring money in, like the mortgage was big. So, you definitely.
I'll tell you a little secret. When I started Blue Pencil, the reason how I got it going is because I did 2 player deals. Rugby player as an agent, placed a certain Australian fly half who was well known for liking a beer, probably about 10 beers. And I placed him with Pierre Babizier in France and of tough disciplinarian. So I remember I called him and said, how's it going on? He said he arrived and the whole of this French town was there to greet him. And Pierre Babizier was there with a tracksuit and made him run around the village. And he lasted there about 3 weeks now. And also another guy who won a World Cup and I got him his first gig. I'm not going to name names, Leicester Tigers. And that's how I started Blue Pencil, you know. And it was like I started with a fax machine. And
Oh yeah.
Like you, and then you kind of like and then I got into lawyers and it was an interesting time. I started in 2002, but I did a bit of rugby agency stuff before then. No, it was good. It was good. If anyone wants to message me, I'll tell you the names of the players. So obviously at some point, you know, the music ends with your rugby career and this is a big challenge at the moment, how players pivot from being a rugby player going into the business world. I mean, you've seen both sides of it. I mean, what advice would you give to players making that transition now or looking to make it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I had the benefit of working across the 2 player unions here and in England and I was doing all of that stuff. Most of the work was prepping players for life after rugby. I created the player development program here in Ireland. It took 2 years to get the IRFU on board to buy into it. And I had one player development manager, Hamish Adams, who now runs Athletics Ireland. So he was doing the whole country. Fitzy, you were still playing probably when he was driving around. I think there's 6 or 7 PDMs now in Ireland. So that's something that player unions focus on a lot. So again, I would assist in and out with a player. Some of them are quite proactive anyway, some aren't. So you're nudging them a bit more. You then do the financial advice, making sure that they're not spending all their money. Some guys get carried away. They see other guys investing and they sort of get sucked into a good idea without doing proper research. So you just need to be careful who's advising them. Ultimately, some guys will say, oh, my dad has an advisor, which is fine. But say if you ever want a second opinion, you can come to me. I can put you in touch with certain people. And again, it's like you're like a second dad to a degree, but you don't want to be too annoying. And the relationship grows over a period of time. You know when you can push them harder. And you know, like I know certain fellas when they don't reply, they just don't want to deal with it. And whether that's for post-career or just anything admin, rugby players just don't like admin. They're just so black and white because they're going off a script of what they have to do and what they have to wear and train, where they have to be, etc., for so long. So I've only had one player ever since I retired, across the player unions and working individually with players who doesn't miss the structure. And funny enough, he's a prop or was a prop. Everyone says, I'm really struggling with the day to day where I'm not being told what to do. So it's like you're in school, you're being told what to do. You go to an academy then, and it's nearly worse than school to a degree. So if you're doing that for the guts of most of your life till you're 35, it's very hard to come out of that. And I mean, something I would tell players is the drop in salary. You have to prepare for that. You don't be expecting to get the levels you're at or were at a few years before. If you've come down, you're still going to keep coming and coming down a fair bit nowadays. And it was a bit different when I retired. Obviously, I trained to be an accountant. I only played pro 5 or 6 years. So although still, because I didn't go back to accountancy, in effect, I had nothing when I went to some of the recruitment agencies in London. I just thought, oh, I'm played for Ireland, ex-pro over here. Everyone knows me. No, they don't. And they said, you've no experience. So that's how I sort of fell into the player union, because I was ringing Damien Hopley about my insurance claim. And he said, oh, come in and see me.
It's interesting you say there about the structure. Mu and I have talked about that. I mean, what colour kit you wearing today, what time you've got to be, what lunch is here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I hadn't considered that at all. And I went, retired, and then month or so I'm into director of rugby of a Irish club, and having to organize other people and myself, and it is I wouldn't say I missed it, but it's very comfortable. You don't really have to you don't have to think about it. So that did take a bit of transitioning. And another I think is when we touched upon earlier, there's a lot of there's been a lot of growth in the game, a lot of positive growth for players, for the unions, for fans. Things in my opinion are trending in a very positive direction for rugby, and with there'll always be more to do, and it's certainly within at least from the outside looking in terms of player representation, we were first professionals. It was very much, find someone to negotiate a contract, and then it's just done. You never hear from them until the next contract's up now. But I know with yourself, there's much greater depth in there, the branding, sponsorships, media deals, et cetera, et cetera. What do you look for, or how do you guide players within that context?
For when they're transitioning, or just
well, both. I would think, absolutely.
A bit like going back to Clive. I've brought people into the business who are better at that than me in the different areas. So I've said there's 6 of us here now. So my role's changed completely in the last 2 years, where I'm now managing people, and that's not something I ever did really. Player union was smaller. There was a couple of people at once, but that's where I'm trying to manage. Sponsorship area, there's all the speaking engagements, another area, there's PR and communications, there's the social media, the branding, all of that. So again, I know a lot about most of it, but I may not be the expert in all of it. Come to contract negotiation, no problem. I can do that in my sleep. So yeah, it's just having that team around me that the players and the clients are comfortable with. So we're finding there's a lot more referral business now, new clients outside of the rugby space that are coming because we have a reputation of negotiating well for our clients, being professional, everything's in writing, because certainly when it comes to speaking engagements, sponsorship things, the brief changes all the time. So players don't like that. If they're coming somewhere for 4 hours to do a photo shoot, video content, blah, blah, blah. They want to know, bang, 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 like their own schedule. So we make sure it's as easy as possible for them in that environment as well. So yeah, it's just being open, transparent early with them on what they have to do or not do. It's nothing worse. A player comes to a shoot like that and he doesn't know what he wants to, or what he has to do, or then they get asked to do additional things. And it's quite difficult at times. I had a player done a shoot last year, and there was a mother there because there was kids involved, and she wanted him to record a piece to camera wishing her other daughter's Gaelic team, and it just was totally inappropriate. And I had to step in and say, look, he's not here for that. I could see her looking at me going, who's your man? I said, no, like, he's done all the other stuff. He's taken loads of pictures with them. The problem with one of those things is it goes all over the place. And if he says something wrong, I've seen other players, and it goes viral. I think Peter Mahoney did one, and he cursed on it. It was something, I think he was wishing St. Michael's all the best or something. School he didn't even know. So it was just he's not doing that. So sometimes you just have to be a bit abrupt and to the point, and people don't like it. So
Actually, no, a very important point. It's about having honest conversations with people. As long as you explain the context of it, it's fine. You have to do it.
yeah.
And I mean, one thing is obviously in the art of negotiation, a superpower has been able to walking away from a deal. I mean, can you share a negotiation that taught you that power without disclosing names or anything? You can disclose names if you want.
No, better not. There is a few, yeah. It doesn't always happen, obviously. You have to understand, you have to be very comfortable, and the client has to be comfortable that if we walk away, like if, for example, it's a big money move out of Ireland, like I won't go the whole way unless the player is comfortable that if the club here do not make the offer or the amount, that he will go to the other club. So, but when you have that power, like sometimes the clubs have the power. It just depends on how the player is playing. I remember I had a young prop who was just like, it's tight head. He was just gold. And literally every week it was going up about 10K. And I remember I got an email from the CEO. He replied to me by accident instead of the recruitment guy and said, we're going to have to give them what he wants. And he also
very
said,
expensive mistake.
I think he said, it's a bit aggressive, his email, which this is probably 2012 or 13. So I was only a year or two into it, and it probably was a bit aggressive. But I knew I had the power in the negotiation. So
You're
and
right.
he said, yeah, really bad email. We probably have to give him what he wants. So I left it for about an hour, and then I sent him a text and said, I think you replied to me by accident. So anyway, he rang and was apologizing, and I just said, you don't have to apologize. If the email was aggressive or feisty, like it was, I'm not going to say it wasn't. So, but yeah, ultimately I got what I wanted. Me and the player had a number which they didn't want to go to. And I said, look, because I had a club in France who basically, it was triple what they were offering, what our number was here. And then the French agent came back and said, you can name it, you can have whatever you want. That's how much the club in France wanted him. And he was only 22, I think, at the time. So I walked away from that side of it to a degree, because I knew if I went back and said, right, I'll have €1 million or whatever, they would have paid it. And I knew the player wasn't going to leave. But ultimately, the club here paid him.
Yeah. It's an important point though, Niall. It's about, anyway, like once again, it goes into business. If you're like having a salary negotiation or if you're moving jobs, it's about knowing your worth. And,
Yeah.
at some point, you know, I know myself, you get a sense of it that you know that you can point a gun to a client's head and say, give them that or else they're not joining, you know, and sometimes you have to be a bit soft and say, look, I know you're offering them this, but like, could you give them a bit more?
Yeah.
And try and justify it, but there's certain people you say you've got to pay them this to get them, or else no chance.
I think
Yeah.
the bizarre part is the sport of rugby and what they actually do on the pitch. And
Yeah.
they literally are so physical, so aggressive. Yet you try and get them to negotiate anything and they just can't do it. Literally, there's less than 1% who are comfortable talking about money.
Yeah.
And that goes probably across society in Ireland as well. Most people don't like talking about money.
Yeah.
When it comes to themselves, but rugby players, they're not good negotiators
Yeah.
when it comes to money. They don't like the confrontation with the coach. I
Yeah.
remember going back to Willie Anderson, and I was renewing my contract, and I'd scored, I think, 85% of the points for the team, and he wouldn't increase my salary. And then he said, I'm not going to pick you next year. So I literally walked out, rang Simon Cohen, who was the main agent at the time in the UK. He was in Manchester, and said, will you do my contract? And he said, yeah, no problem. I'd never even met him. And literally he went in and got, I think it was a 20% uplift. I went, that's fair, I'll sign it. So, and I said, I'm never doing my contract again. And I didn't think I was going to end up doing hundreds of contracts over the years as an agent. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, they don't like the confrontation of it.
Yeah.
That prop was brilliant at, the coaches kept trying to bully him. And I said, just sit there with your head down and just talk to Niall about money. I'll talk to you about rugby. I'm not talking to you about money. So after 2 meetings, they stopped at him. So there was a good combination of him and me. Some of the time it can just be me, and the other side can get a whiff of that as well. So
Yeah.
As you said, every situation is sort of different.
Yeah, I can remember now. I think you've always had an instinct for it. Do you remember when you first came to London Irish? The chief executive was a guy called Duncan Leopold.
Yeah.
And I can remember we had match fees.
In
Remember
Clive's
that?
house.
Yeah, and all of a sudden they pulled the plug on the match fees, and
Yeah.
most of us rescinded. But I seem to remember you actually, Fitzy as well. I think we're not having
Me
any
and
of it.
Jeremy didn't.
Yeah,
Was it you, Fitz? So I think it was 3 or 4 of us who said no. I remember I was in Clive's house. I was going, I've just moved from Ireland. I've given up
yeah,
my career as a chartered accountant to
yeah.
play for Ireland. He's now saying you're going to take my match fee and my win bonus off me. And I was like going, and I'd also not got picked for Ireland anymore. So I was going, no chance.
No.
Yeah.
I signed a deal. I'm not taking it. I remember Dave Humphreys dropped it. I remember at the end of the season, he was going, I can't believe I gave that. I can't believe it. I took it away.
So no, confession time. Were you earning match fees then in the
Yeah,
early days?
all season. I only missed.
I didn't earn anything.
Yeah, I did it Humps.
I should have come to you. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've spoken, changing tack there, you've spoken about some of the habits you've got currently, Wim Hof, transcendental meditation, so on and so forth. Is there anything you've pulled back from your rugby days that you've continued, whether it's a mindset or a habit that you continue through into your life now?
I suppose you never really lose the wanting to win. Although I'm not too bad. Like on the bike, I don't really try and compete too much, probably because my knee is buggered. Golf, I take or leave it. As I said, I bring that mantra of the goal kicking into certain things and keeping myself calm. But I definitely changed, certainly in the last 2 years, I'd say, particularly the 3 years, just on my negotiating style and not as aggressive or feisty. I don't do as much email negotiation initially until it gets to sort of closing it, because I find it's better done verbally if you can. But yeah, no, I suppose one thing I don't do as much, I don't go drinking as much as I did when I played rugby. That's probably an age thing. Yeah, no, I'm not so sure.
And if you could rewrite, rugby's relationship with the players, what one thing would you change?
I think respect for the players off the bat, that just wasn't there then.
Yeah.
I always got a sense, particularly in the players' union here, that the players, i.e. me, leading them, wanted to change something. It wasn't really that at all. It was just that we wanted to be included or have a say. It was a case of always being told what you have to do by the sort of Blazers or whatever. I think that all came to respect, because I think we came from a place as amateurs where we didn't have respect for them. So that's probably taken the guts of 25 years to slowly but surely change. So that, for me, would probably be one of the things that I think would have helped at the time. But I'm also conscious of the fact that it was just the way it was. So, and you just have to learn on the go and adapt. I wouldn't blame the RFU or the ORFU for the way they were. Some unions are slower to change than others, and RFU got a lot of stuff right, and then they got a lot of stuff wrong as well over the years. But I mean, and players did as well. So, but yeah, no, I'd say that's probably the main thing. I think also, sorry,
Yeah.
going back to the player development programs and having an interest like outside of rugby, I would have seen that really early, predominantly from the player unions, and that the ORFU or the RFU here just couldn't see the benefit of having a happy player off the pitch meant you're going to get a better player on the pitch, because they didn't have a tangible measurement of it. They didn't want to do it. So again, that was probably a learning. It would have been nicer. It was done in Australia. It was done in America in different sports, but they just didn't see the benefit of it. So they didn't want to put the money in for a period of time. So that was quite frustrating as well.
Do you think clubs should be doing more to support players making a transition? Because this is always a moot point.
I think a lot of the clubs do it more now. They see the benefit of it. Like Saracens were probably one of the best in the UK at it. Again, what you're doing outside of rugby, if it's someone employed by a club, a lot of players feel they're not going to tell that person everything. It's like if anyone's got mental health issues, they don't want to go to someone in the club in case he tells the team doc, who tells the coach. So again, having someone external is beneficial, I think, to certain aspects. So I would agree clubs could be more supportive, but the more I see it in the program, the head coach or the club might say they're supportive of a player development program, but like if a fella has a lecture and he has a training session, the lecture's out the way. If he has exams and he's needed for a training before a big game, he's not doing the exam. So doesn't happen that often, but it does happen. So again,
Yeah,
that's probably just age profile of certain coaches that older up towards our age is just old school. No, forget about it. Everything outside of rugby is off when a big game week is on. So like you see people doing a commercial appearance on a Wednesday of a big game, and if they lose the weekend, the player gets slated in the media or on social media that, oh, he had his mind because on a Wednesday he was doing a photo shoot. Complete nonsense, because they're going to have a down day. They need to get away from rugby.
yeah,
But that old school perception probably still exists.
yeah, yeah,
But I mean, you touch upon a great point there. That balance is key, and a more well-rounded player is a better player. You know, if he's learning skills, if he's mixing in different company, whether it's in a media event or he's doing some work experience. You know, and I want to, personally congratulate you. I was there at the time when you brought Hamish in, and Hamish was absolute gold. You know, and it's so nice to see how things have developed over the last decade or so, where this has really come to the forefront, because it is one, at some point, all players are going to finish playing, and then making that transition smoother is really, really important, because it can be, a very scary time of your life as you get to that end point, or sometimes, like yourself, it just creeps up on you. You've got an injury and boom, it's over. So yeah, that was great stuff, and it's so nice to see how it's developed.
Cheers.
I think one aspect, though, Fitzy, of where clubs, I mean, I've spoken to Fitzy about this. If you look at Bordeaux Begley, who just won a European Cup, their biggest source of revenue is from their business club within their club. And sometimes I think if you look at, say, our old club, London Irish, there's a massive like alumni network of people. And sometimes I think clubs miss that opportunity, because in that alumni network are the sponsors of the club, are the ambassadors of the club. And sometimes I think that should be aspect. Some clubs are good at it, some clubs don't even do it, some clubs are trying it, but I mean, you've got to look at somewhere like London Irish and think if they could tap into that a bit more, people would buy into it.
Hopefully they get it back up and going again,
Yeah,
because I would say that will be a big aspect of it if they get back up and running and playing again in the sort of heart of London again.
yeah,
Not out in Reading.
Yeah, Reading Irish.
Fingers crossed. So now tell us, what's next for Navy Blue and yourself?
Like, as I said, I'm almost 15 years in it. Still love it. Like I did rugby 10, 11 years, players unions about 10 years. So I'm nearly 15 at it now. And I think the beauty of it is watching the players change. Like when I started, the young guys were a bit clueless. Now they're coming in, they're physically ready to go. They're way more professional in everything they're doing. So I've enjoyed that. I enjoy representing people in media. We've retired athletes, we've female athletes, different sports. We're growing a comms division now, so we're the only company in Ireland who have talent management, sponsorship and PR and communications. So that's side of it's about 18 months up. So sort of focusing on that and trying to grow it out from there. And again, just getting a bit bigger. I have no intention of being the biggest. But again, it probably goes back to the quality point. It's been the best. And keeping the standards up, whether it's in the office with the staff, the relationships with the clients, relationships with sort of the talent clients, and then with clients who are sponsors and brands that we work with as well. I think if you deviate away from quality, you're in danger. And if you don't move with the times and keep sort of upskilling and going with like all ChatGPT, AI stuff, again, I wouldn't be completely up to speed, but thankfully the team in here are, and changes and how you can do things better. It's just, and how you communicate with players. Like even my own kid, he's 17, like me and my wife were the only two people in his WhatsApp group. So like they don't communicate on WhatsApp, the younger generation. So it's like originally I'd be emailing players in the players union. Normal messages, that's just long gone, and then WhatsApp. So small stuff like that and just adjusting and trying to stay relevant. So I'm now at an age where, for 54, a lot of kids coming out of school, I know the parents. So it's sort of going, oh, okay, I'm that old now. So, but yeah. But some guys, funny, some clients like the older, the more experienced than a younger age, and it's weird. So we have a bit of both in here. So I think we have it covered, hopefully.
Yeah, I think the one thing you can't change with like AI, chat GPT is big in recruitment, but the softer skills are just, you can't at the moment, like it's not advanced enough to deal with negotiations, and you need that like human interaction. And that's something I don't think is gonna change for quite a while. But on to the quick fire questions. I have to read them off the
Okay.
script because Fitzy's written them and they're very good. So I don't want to get them wrong. I'll be in trouble. So number one, who's the best teammate you ever played with and why?
I'd say you guys know Nick Burrows, who's South African. I lived with him, very good friends. Him obviously he lives in South Africa, but yeah, he could just put a ball in front of me so many times. I knew where it would be, and I scored so many tries off the back
Yeah.
of his passing. So I'd say that's why.
Yeah. Okay. He's a tough operator as well, wasn't he?
Mm.
He's a tough guy.
Yeah.
And what's the biggest myth about agents?
Well, certainly rugby agents, that they earn a lot of money, because we don't. So I'd say that's probably the biggest myth.
Yeah. Okay. And there's one skill from rugby that gives you an edge in business.
I think the resilience, that ability to just, like, you have to just wash away a no, which you get a lot of in this industry. So again, like the ability to just get yourself off the ground, pick yourself up and keep going.
Okay. And a deal or a career moment that still makes you smile.
Has to be London Irish against Harlequins. I scored 32 points. So it was a Premiership record. So I was literally untouchable. It was everything, every move that I was in came off. I think I scored 2 tries. I gave Bishy 2. And then I kicked 10 out of 10, like into a win, either side of the pitch. You just in the zone. I don't think I ever played a game like it again.
Yeah. That Dick Best's first game in
Yeah.
chart. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
he was coaching Quins.
Was
He
he?
was still at Quins. Yeah. It was before he came
okay.
over to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you could give your 25-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
I'd say when I was 25, I was in a meeting in Limerick in the Castle Troy Park Hotel with the Ireland team manager, Pat Whelan. And it was the time where there was it was the first season we were allowed to come back and play for Leinster or
Yeah.
Munster or whatever in the Heineken Cup. And it was a row about release. And I just got up and walked out and said, I've had enough of this shit. And I didn't get capped for 3 years. So,
Yeah.
3 more years. So I have a thing I've found later in life, impulse control disorder.
Yeah.
So if I'd known I had that, I might have calmed. I've done a bit of breathing, 2 sharp inhales, and it might have
Yeah.
stopped me from leaving the meeting.
Yeah. I mean, fair play. He was a scary guy, Pat Whelan. I
Yeah.
can remember him
He
coming
was
into a
just being
room. Like Darth Vader walking in the room.
He was just being unreasonable. It
Yeah.
wasn't that he was. It was just. I just said it's just not. It's not fair.
Yeah.
It was just constant. I just said that's it. I just remember Conor O'Shea's face gone
Yeah.
and going, did he just do that? Oh God, he did.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, no, it's been fantastic having you on the show. I mean, your journey shows what happens when leadership, resilience, and purpose cross from sport into business. You didn't just build a career pivot, you built platforms for others to succeed. And for our listeners, whether you're leading a team or building a business or reinventing your career, this conversation is a reminder that the DNA of champions isn't just talent, it's trust, hard work, and the courage to start again. I think you're an inspiration to us all. You know, I look back on the time at London Irish, and you're definitely a natural agent. You're a fantastic player. I suppose sometimes that would, because you're representing other fantastic players, sometimes that gets lost. But you're certainly a magician on the pitch, and we're very grateful for you spending your time and sharing your insights today.
No problem. Enjoyed it, boys. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Niall. It was great to have you. That was really inspiring.